right, since we have a gavel, we'll use it and we'll call this meeting of the Select Water Committee to order. Would you please call the roll?
Senator Ellis,
Excused?
Senator Guru,
Here.
Senator Hicks,
Here.
Senator Kolb,
Excused?
Senator Larson,
Here.
Representative Conrad,
Here.
Representative Crago,
Excused?
Representative Larson,
Here.
Representative Nyman,
Here.
Representative Yin,
Excused?
Vice Chair Summers,
Here.
Chairman Steinmetz.
Here.
We have 5 excused, Chairwoman.
Thank you. We do have a
Or
quorum.
4 excused, my bad.
All right, thank you very much, and welcome to the Select Water Committee. We look forward to working with you this year. We've got our team all back together. So, fellow committee members, for those of you who have not been on the committee before, at the closing of session, we always get together and make recommendations to our Select Water Commission. So that is the purpose of today's meeting. We'll be taking some actions by the Select Water to recommend actions to the commission. That is the purpose of the first item on our agenda, and then we will be taking up interim topics. With that, Director Mead, would you take us through the actions we need to take action on today?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jason Mead, Director of the Water Development Office. So again, just to reiterate what Senator Steinmetz mentioned, everything in front of you today was what we've been talking about for the last year, starting back in May. And we're either in the planning bill or the construction bill, so we're just effectuating the contracts and the agreements that are coming out of that. So small water, in the construction bill, we appropriated funds to the program. Since that time back in November, we received applications, reviewed those applications. Now we're bringing individual project agreements to you as well. And I would remind you that all of these things are going to go in front of the Commission, Water Development Commission, on March 20th to be vetted once again for their consideration of approval. So just a quick recap, and I'm sure you guys are all aware, but the construction bill is in third reading today. The planning bill, I think, received concurrence by the House yesterday. So none of this has become law yet, so the recommendations should probably be contingent upon the bills becoming law. And then I'll point out a couple of unique things because of a House Appropriations Amendment as we get to them on the construction bill. Okay, so I handed out a summary sheet that looks like this. That's what we'll be working off of today. And we'll just start running down through that. So the first item for your consideration is planning project amendments. Again, this was in the planning bill. This is the Pavilion groundwater supply amendment for $429,000 to bring that total agreement to $1,115,080 and a 1-year time extension. And that was just because when the bids came in for the well drilling, they came in high, so we needed to come back to get that additional funding to drill that well. So with that, I would ask for your consideration of that particular amendment.
All right, are there any questions? Senator Guru?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't know if we were just going to roll right into the next, we were going to break there, so that's.
No, we'll go ahead and take questions at this point.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Jason. So the Pavilion groundwater supply, now we're amending up $429,000. The original was 600 and some thousand, and we're amending up 4 to 1.1. Is that approximately?
That's correct.
I'm Lander mathing it there.
Yeah.
And that's where the bids came? Was
They
it
were
totally
close to
bid
that, I
driven
think.
on that 429, I guess?
Madam Chair, I think they were a little less than that, but considering now it's, those were bid back in July and it's going to be sometime after that, we wanted to make sure we had enough money where we weren't going to short ourselves and then have to redo this whole thing again and delay again.
Go ahead,
Follow up now.
follow
So
up.
now on this project, I just want to make sure I understand. All easements are in place, contracts are ready to go. This baby's ready to go out the door. And the reason why I ask is just because this has been a pretty hefty price increase. And understand inflation and all that stuff, but I just want to get a handle on that, make sure that's where we're at.
Madam Chair, Senator Grew, I believe that's true, that we are ready to move forward and rebid that and then enter into a contract with the driller and get it done.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, any further questions for the director? Seeing none, I would entertain a recommendation on this section.
I make that motion. Motion to review and recommend the pavilion groundwater supply in the planning project amendments.
All right,
Second.
moved by Representative Summers, seconded by Senator Drew. Is there any discussion on the motion? Discussion on the motion, seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion has passed. We are on to the next section.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. These next 3 blocks of projects are our level 1 and 2 planning projects that are in the 2024 planning bill. As you can see, we've got under account 1, which is the first block, we've got the 9 projects there. You can see in the third column, that's the consultant that the contract is with and then the contract amount. And again, these came out of that procurement process we went through where we reviewed RFPs, interviews, got, competitive process to come up with these. So we've got the 9 in account 1 for level 1 projects. That second group are level 2 projects in account 1. We've got 3 of those, and then that last group there is 5 projects that are level 1 projects in account 2. So unless you have any specific questions, I'd ask for your favorable consideration of that entire block of planning contracts.
All right, are there any questions on that section? Questions? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chairman,
Yes,
Madam Chairman, I would move to review and recommend the 2024 level 1 and level 2 planning project contracts as specified in for level 1 projects, level 2 projects, new development, and level 1 projects rehabilitation and level 1 projects new development.
all right, moved by Summers, seconded by Larson. Any question, any discussion on the amendment? Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion has passed.
Okay.
We're on to the next section.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Guru.
Thank you. One quick question, Jason, on the group we just passed. These consultants and engineers, when they come in and bring the project, you have these contracts, these engineers are in a pool, and then it's just who's ever on top, basically, does it? Is that, no?
Madam
Explain
Chair,
that how that
Senator
works.
Grew. So we get an application from a sponsor. We review that as an office. We assign it to a project manager. They go out and meet with the sponsor, understand the issue, discuss what we can do with them. When we then bring that to the May meeting, the commission and the Select Water Committee will review our recommendation as an office and either approve or deny moving forward. Once it's approved, then our office puts together a scope of work and a request for proposal. Well, I should say the first thing we do is we put it out on the street in an advertisement saying, we've got this list of planning projects. If you're interested in being considered for them, provide your statements of qualifications. And we get a whole bunch of consultants that want to put in on this project and this project. And then we shortlist those as an office based on their experience and background to be able to complete that project. We put together the RFP, we send that out to either, the shortlisted group of consultants for each project. They put together a proposal, interviews, all that stuff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to make sure I got asked this question last night by a constituent. I thought I had it, but I wanted to make sure. Okay,
All
thank you.
right, thank you, Senator Guru. We appreciate your thoroughness. On to the next section.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to skip down to the bottom, the University of Wyoming agreements real quick, just because those are also part of the planning bill. The first one there is the biennium budget for the UW Office of Water Programs, which administer all the UW water research projects we get into and solicit those.
All right,
100
Director, I'm going to stop you for just 1 second. We had a few people just arrive. Does everyone have their spreadsheets and understand where we're at? Okay, so we are on the SWCE notebook summary page. We have already approved everything down to the small water project program. Are you with me? the small water project program, we're setting aside for the moment, and we're on the University of Wyoming agreements. Everybody understand? All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The second one there under the Wyoming agreements is the water research program, which are the two water research projects that we discussed back in November and January. So those are just contracts between the commission and the UW to complete that. So again, and ask for your consideration of those two agreements.
All right, are there any questions for the director? Questions? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chairman.
Mr. Vice Chairman?
Madam Chairman, on the University of Wyoming agreements, I would move to review and recommend to the commission the slate 668 and 672 in the e-notebook.
All right, moved by Summers, seconded by Larson. Any discussion? Discussion, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. That motion has passed. Director?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So now we'll go back to the small water program, and I'd invite Jody Pavlika up here. She administers this program for our office.
All right, and committee members, there is a 2-page summary of the small water programs in front of you with the blue lines. That would be that spreadsheet, and I am assuming we'll be working off of that today. All
Madam
right.
Chair. We'll be
ahead.
working off the account one first.
Okay,
and then we'll move
account
to
one
account two.
first.
Off the page there.
Madam Chairwoman, before we begin, I just wanted to give a little bit of a background of what's gotten us to this particular table, because as you may imagine, with 83 projects, it's not a small amount of effort. And it's not just effort for our office, but our application deadline is November 15th. And each of these conservation districts fully vet these projects and review the projects and meet with the landowners and go out and participate in the development of these projects because their boards have to sign off on the agreements before they can ever begin construction. So I just wanted to lay that out there, that there is a tremendous amount of effort locally to get these put together. And then, you know, I frequently get calls to make sure that, well, we're looking at this and I've talked to this person. What do you think about that? So it's a real partnership between us in Cheyenne and a very large local effort on the ground to make sure that everything is in keeping with the way the program's laid out and that it's going to meet the public benefit requirements that are required. So I just want to make sure that everybody knew that this process doesn't just begin in November when the applications start, that it begins several months before that, when the conservation districts and their elected officials, their boards are out on the ground meeting with landowners and making sure that everything meets the requirements of the program before applications are ever submitted. And then for the sake of brevity, you see that column on the right-hand side?
Oh, yes, go ahead. We have some general questions before you go through the documents provided. Representative Summers.
Madam Chairman, thank you. So my question is on priorities. You know, how do you prioritize? And ultimately, how do you, you know, we have a certain amount of money in the budget, but it's based upon the applications you've got. So is this what's been weeded down by somebody, or is this everything that's available that's that would meet the criteria? So is this everything, or is this a weeded down list by you all?
So in large part, the weeding happens before it ever makes it into this table. And sometimes we need to call sponsors and say, this is not an eligible project. And before it ever makes it into this table, oftentimes I will call them and ask them to withdraw the application because they don't want to come explain to you why there's a do not fund recommendation. And so we received 83 applications this year. And because of the vetting that I had done and the districts had done before we ever got those, they were all program eligible.
So Madam Chairman. So Madam Chairman, thank you. So if there had been 150 applicants and they would all have met the eligibility criteria, would that be the number we'd have in the bill?
We would use the priority system to rank them according to our available funding, and then make recommendations of funding depending upon the amount of money that we had. And the way those, you asked a question about how those priorities are signed. And so we look at the largest expense of the project. So my good example is a well with a pipeline. So I'll look at the cost of the well and look at the cost of the pipeline. If the well expense is the greatest expense, then I classify it as a source water development, which makes it priority one. If the pipeline is the largest expense, because we regularly have those 5-10 miles of stock water line, if that's the largest expense, then it becomes a priority 3 pipeline and conveyance project. So it is sort of, trying to find a black and white way to assign those priorities. We look at the single largest cost and the overall purpose of the project, and that's how we assign the priority.
So follow up, got a series of these, so. So in the budget bill, we have a chunk of money for small water projects that these will then fit into once they are vetted, through the whole process. But my question is, that number you provide in the budget bill is based upon the projects that you got coming. Is that accurate or inaccurate?
Madam Chair, Representative Summers, that is accurate. When we originally talked about this in November and January, we had roughly $1.5 million, I believe, because we were asking for an additional $1 million on top of the current balance in the account one. When we actually had a chance to get through all of our applications and understand what they looked like and the priorities, when we have to prioritize, what we've done in the past is, these are such similar projects when it comes down to this pipeline versus that pipeline, that if we don't have enough money to get past funding an entire priority group, 6 different priorities, then we will just cut it off at that priority group. And we would only have been able to fund priorities 1 and 2. We would have left about 27 projects on the table that we felt were good projects. So at the time, I approached Senator Steinmetz and suggested, we may want to consider adding a little bit of funding because of that, and that's where that $500,000 additional came in.
Okay.
Normally, we would try to live within our means, but considering the number of projects that would have been left on the table, I felt it was probably a better approach, because this is a good program. It gets a lot of good work done on the ground quickly, and we only have a small amount of money in these projects. There are quite a few partners involved in these projects typically.
Thank you, Director, and I would just add a little bit to that. When the Senate decided to remove the cloud seating, we thought that this was a better use of the funds, policy decision on our part. So, with that, are there any further questions on the general program details? Go ahead.
Is she gonna get into specifics, I guess, and then?
Yes, is that, unless you have an aversion to that?
Nope.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, well, I will start down the column on the right-hand side, and you can see the column right next to it lists the project type, which is also tied back to what the priority is. As an example, the Campbell County Conservation District is applying for a well. That's a priority 1 project for source water development. The next one down is Hot Springs. They have 6 projects for $210,000. And you can see that most of those projects are priority 3 pipeline and conveyance projects with 1 well. Laramie County Conservation District is also applying for 6 projects for a total of $193,880. And theirs is a mixture of pipeline and well projects also. The Lincoln Conservation District is applying for 2 projects for $70,000. And this is a case where there is stream bank erosion, which is eroding away one of their parks in town, and is at a point where it's about to cause one of the irrigation ditches to flow into the river. So this is a sort of a rescue operation, if you'll pardon the expression. So that's Lincoln Conservation District. The next one is Little Snake River Conservation District. They have 31 projects this year for $965,500. And that is a pretty healthy mixture of small reservoirs, wells, and pipelines. Looks like they have 1 spring as well. The next group is the Medicine Bow Conservation District. They have 2 projects for a total of $64,000. And they are asking for 1 pipeline and 1 small reservoir. The Meeteetse Conservation really did an excellent job of partnering this year with Game and Fish and Natural Resources Trust, Trout Unlimited, I think. And they came in this year with 4 projects to try and help the Grable River. Out of new development, we have 2 projects for a total of $57,000, but you'll see their name again here later. Niobrara has 1 project this year, a pipeline project to connect to a well we just drilled for them, for $27,000. North Platte Valley Conservation District has 1 project this year for $35,000. That's a pipeline. Paposia Conservation District has 1 project for $35,000. Sheridan County Conservation District has 5 projects for $169,000. And this is also a healthy mixture. It looks like we have springs, pipelines, an irrigation project, a well, and a stream channel project. Shoshone River Conservation District came in this year for 1 project for $35,000. South Bighorn Conservation District has 2 projects for $49,000. Sublette County has 1 project for $12,000, and that's a small reservoir. That was my place here. Teton Conservation District has 1 project, a rural community fire suppression project, for $35,000. Washakie County Conservation District has 1 well project this year for $10,000. And the Weston County Natural Resource District has 1 project for $15,000. And that looks like it's a well also.
All right, I have a question.
Okay.
Are the little shovels indicating they're shovel ready?
It is, thank you.
All right, well, it took me a minute to figure out what they were, but that's very creative. Thank you.
That was,
oh, that's-
Barry and I were laughing about that this morning. That was actually his idea several years ago, and everyone loves it so much, I couldn't forget to put the shovels on there because everyone would miss them, so.
I love the shovels. Good job.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you very much. Are there any questions? Senator Cole?
Thank you, Chairman. Just a question about the items 10, 11, and 12, Kelly State land parcels, I assume that's referring to. I assume, that's just maybe wrong. I guess it's the first question.
Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Go
The
ahead.
Kelly State land ponds,
Yes.
whatever these things are, is that on the Kelly parcel?
It would not surprise me if that was the case. I don't happen to have that information in front of me at this time, but we do a lot of projects on state land.
All right, yep.
Oh, it's the wrong place. Oh, excuse me.
Okay.
It's a different part of the state with the same name.
Awesome.
So,
That
I
happens a
withdraw
lot.
the question. Thank you.
All right, well, that's how we learn, Senator Kolb. All right, go ahead, Director.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to point out one thing. So we are recommending, there's available funding with what's in the construction bill currently would be $2,084,375. So I'm looking at that 3rd column over. And
On
we are
the
recommending,
Back page, is that where you're at?
sorry, we're on the summary page again. You can see available funding and then the new 2024 requests. So you can see the difference in available versus what we're requesting. That would get us through all the priorities. In actuality, we only have priorities 1 through 5 this year. We don't have any 6s. The one caveat I would say in your recommendation, if you so choose, is because of the House Appropriations Amendment to the construction bill, the $500,000 that was added, I think it was Senate Ag, chose to fund that out of general funds. And the House Appropriations Amendment, they took that general fund language out, and it now says contingent upon the transfer of funds to Water Development Account 1 from another funding source. So with that, we are aware that the budget bills, both of them, well, the original budget bills had a footnote that said the state auditor shall transfer $16,911,633 from the general fund to Water Development Account 2, or I'm sorry, Account 1. And that was really a one-time biennium replacement of what's been going on with Board of Control being taken out of Account 1. So with that said, we only have enough funding in Account 1 without that $500,000 transfer to fund the priorities 1 and 2s. So I would suggest a recommendation, if you so choose, that you can fund those or recommend those contingent upon the bill becoming law. But the priorities 3s, 4s, and 5s would be contingent upon the budget bill and a transfer of funds to Account 1 as was originally suggested. If that transfer doesn't happen, then there won't be enough funds. We'll only be able to move forward with the priority 1s and 2s.
I understand.
clear as mud.
I'm not sure. I'd like to go to David to ask him how he thinks we might handle it, because the construction bill still has to go to concurrence committee once it passes, if the amendment remains, and that is subject to the joint conference committee. And so David, how would you recommend we word that?
Well, Madam Chair, ultimately, of course, whether that amendment stays in or is removed would be up to the joint conference committee. But certainly, I think it would be valuable to keep that in mind as the committee decides what to do with that bill. And of course, what happens with the budget still factors into this a lot. So I'd say there's still quite a bit up in the air. But the cleanest way, I think, would probably be for the joint conference committee to account for those funds more specifically as they address the construction bill.
All right.
So, Madam Chair, again, just a reminder, these are going to go in front of the commission on March 20th. And depending on how this all shakes out in the session, we would only, our recommendation of them would change accordingly, depending on the availability of funding that
Just the
comes out.
availability of funds.
So potentially, yeah, recommend based on the availability of
All
funds.
right, does everyone understand the situation we find ourselves in? Usually the water bills run through first. There's some of the first bills out for some reason. However, it worked out this year. There are some of the last bills we're dealing with, and so we find ourselves in this situation. With that said, go ahead, Senator Cole. Senator Guru.
Question, thank you, Madam Chair. Jason, or I'm sorry, whoever can answer this question, back to your shovel. The shovel's great. And just so I get a handle on this, of the level 1s and 2s, based on the conversation we're having right now, on the level 1s and 2s that are on this sheet, what do you think are the percentage, just to guess, based on your experience, prior years, whatever, how many of these projects are going to go this year, the 1s and 2s?
The ones with the shovels or shovel-ready, those will start and be done this summer most likely, because otherwise they wouldn't have taken the time to get them shovel-ready. But the other 1s and 2s, it is common for projects to take at least 2 years before they're finished.
That's, if I may continue.
Go ahead.
That's been my experience too, and it's been a concern about the cost escalation with the inflation that we've had and how that goes. So now with the question that we're having about how much money do we have and how much can we fund? Well, we have enough money to fund the 1s and 2s, all of them, and we know that 50% of them aren't going to get completed this year. Then we have a supplemental, then we have another budget year. The likelihood of us having enough money for all the level 1s and 2s that will get done is very high, correct? And probably even be able to go on past that. Wouldn't that be true?
Mr. Chairman, the one thing I would point out here is we have a limitation on this, the small water program, so we can only fund up to 35,000, 50% up to 35,000. You see quite a few of these are at 35,000 because these projects are much larger. We have funding partners. I'm not aware that we've ever maybe come back to add money to a small water project, a year from now if the cost goes up.
Okay, well, but that's good news. But still, back to the point, as far as having enough money to do these projects, probably will, based on what I'm hearing, to have that funding, if a large percentage aren't going to be done this year anyway, correct?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure I quite follow your logic.
Well, the question is about, do we have enough money this year based on what we know right now? And we don't know everything. We've got some balls in the air still, as we've all admitted. So I'm just trying to figure out what the problem. Is there a problem? How big is the problem, really? If a lot of these projects that don't have the little shovels next to them aren't going to get shoveled this year. So I'm just trying to figure out.
Mr. Chairman,
Director, if I can jump in, I think what he's saying is because they are not There are not a lot of shovels on the list. If the project was delayed for a year, would you have enough funding? Is that correct, Senator Guru? It's a legislative translation. Remember, our brains are mushy right now. So I'm translating legislative talk into real people speak. Go
Thanks for the
ahead.
translation. No, she's absolutely right, Madam Chair.
Well, and I would say, Madam Chair, that some of the funding is actually used to get the projects ready. So for engineering and so on and so forth. So typically when we see shovel-ready projects come in, it's projects that are maybe a priority 3 or 4 or 5, and they may get passed over because of limited funding. So they have to put themselves in a better position by going out and trying to pay for the engineering and getting that stuff ready so they can move up to a priority 1 and get funding.
All right, have you got it? Okay. We still have the summary sheet on account 2 that we didn't go through. So that would be your second page, unless there are further questions on the summary sheet for account 1. Seeing, all right,
And,
Representative Summers.
Madam Chairman, thank you. You know, and it's the same concern I had last year at this time, and that is that one conservation district is eating up the vast majority of the money. And when you go back over time, one conservation district has by far and away eaten up more money. And I realize they hire an engineer, and Senator Hicks, I realize it's in your area, but it still concerns me that we are putting all this money into one area of the state that's not very big, considering where all the places there are irrigation in the state of Wyoming.
All right,
Chairman,
Senator Hicks.
seeing as how that seems to be directed at a certain entity that I work for, let me see if I can answer that. So number one, that area expands all the way into Sweetwater County. Some of these projects we've actually done in Fremont County. And so I don't know what area you're referencing is, but the program is available for everybody in the state of Wyoming. Anybody can go to one of your 32 conservation districts and have them sponsor an application. So it's available to anybody in the state of Wyoming. So that's the first thing, Madam Chairman. So the organization that I work for a board of directors for a conservation district. They put a high priority because much of this area is desert. And a lot of it's BLM land. And my board has made a priority to develop water in that basin to sustain the livestock and the wildlife. To that point, we've hired our own professional licensed engineering firm. And this is the reason that we are capable of doing this number of projects, is because we don't rely on other federal agencies or hire private entities. We spend almost $180,000 a year on an engineering to be able to deliver conservation projects across Sweetwater and Carbon County to livestock producers and for wildlife projects. And so that program is available to everybody. Most of these are going directly towards stockwater and wildlife type habitat projects. And so I don't know, Madam Chairman, why other people don't apply for it that have the financial means to do so, other than their local boards haven't established as their priority. So it's not like one entity is taking the money, it's just nobody else decides that they want to prioritize water development for livestock and wildlife. That's a local decision.
Senator Guru.
Thanks. Just take off on that. I actually went to my local water district and I begged them, because they kind of came to me and were saying, well, we see all this money for water projects. Are you applying for any? No. Well, what's your point then? Yeah, if you don't play, we can't do, we just spin a wheel and give money out. And so that, I've chided my board about my conservation district about trying to get in this game. So my question is, when you hire your own engineer, would that be something that my water district could do? Maybe I should ask this to Jason. I want to get Larry centric on this here. Because I'm just asking. Would that be a way? Because that's what's going back to my earlier question about how the firms get picked. Could we just have our own firm? Is that something I could tell my water district to be something to look into?
You want to
Mr.
go
Chairman, we
first?
don't
And then-
hire, we don't go through this selection process. We're not involved in hiring the engineer, and I'd say Senator Hicks would be better to
Okay.
maybe explain how that has been done through his district.
Yeah, so, Madam Chairman, so most of these projects don't necessarily require an engineering firm, but they require some engineering, and particularly with the technical aspects. Almost every one of these requires filing a water right with the Wyoming State Engineers Office, and that's a process all in its own. You still have to comply with the rules and regulations of the State Engineers Office if you're constructing a 20-foot stock pond or a 12-foot stock pond. You have to get core permits if you're working in the river. So it takes some technical expertise. We utilize our engineers on very large projects also, like major diversion structures that does require a full-blown license and technical engineer. But the fact that we have that expertise in-house, the way the program's structured, you can use federal agencies or other, like the Natural Resource Conservation Service. We've sponsored projects again, because the way the program works, we're the local sponsor. We've sponsored a number of projects over the years for the BLM. The BLM will come to us and say, we'd like to put stock water. I think Jody can verify that. They provide the engineering. A lot of these projects that are done around the state are provided by the engineering services from the NRCS, Forest Service, BLM, but those agencies tend to have their own workload, so consequently, sometimes they can't get a lot done, even though there may be an interest. My board says we're willing to go out and hire a professional licensed engineer to be able to provide the technical expertise to deliver these to the ranching community in that area. And there's one here that runs all the way right outside of Rock Springs on the, we've worked with our adjacent conservation districts because we have that technical expertise. We've extended that courtesy to provide engineering services to Sweetwater County Conservation District. We've done projects where we've provided the technical administration and the engineering for Paposia Conservation District in Fremont County. So it's much broader than that, but that's the reason that we are able to deliver this program, was because my board has made it a priority for that ranching community and work with those adjacent conservation districts. We've done projects in Saratoga and Campbell River Conservation District. And so, because we've had that internal expertise and we allow other adjoining conservation districts to participate and utilize our expertise in the program. So we're sponsoring projects that are in Sweetwater County Conservation District. We're sponsoring projects that are in Saratoga and Encampment Conservation District. We've sponsored projects that were in Paposia Conservation District because we have the technical expertise to assist those adjoining conservation districts to do that. But to answer your question, it does take some technical abilities and skills to get through the permitting process, some of the design criteria and association to do that.
All
So I
right,
hope that answers your question.
all right. Senator Larson had a
And-
question.
Yes, Madam Chair. I think I'm off topic on this, but it's important. I want to ask Senator Hicks, is your conservation districts doing the full amount on the mill levy? Or, I guess that's a question I'd like to ask.
Yes.
Go ahead. All right. All right.
And not only, Madam Chairman, to answer that question, not only the full mill for the conservation district, the water conservancy district, similar to an irrigation district, they also provide some of the funding to do some of the irrigation infrastructure. We don't have an irrigation district, we have a water conservancy district. So they pay part of the insurance and part of their mill levy to assist to provide that technical assistance for specific irrigation projects within that district also.
All right. Representative Summers.
So, Madam Chairman, and the reason I brought up the priority thing, so we have money, more money into the budget, into this category, where, which basically funds all of the priorities, it looks like. and one entity is getting half of the money. And I just think at some point, we have to, I don't disagree that they're doing good work. The question is that equitable just because they have a engineer? I question whether that is, and whether we should just be adding money in to projects just because the project is available and ready.
And that's a policy decision for the body. We've had a good visit about all of this, and I think that we have also heard that they're providing their umbrella to a lot of other areas around their vicinity, that this may skew a little bit how much is coming under one conservation district. If I'm incorrect, please.
So, Madam
point that out.
Chairman, if I may, so it's not adding money for one conservation district, it's adding money to meet all the priorities under the criteria. So if you look at that list and said, okay, let's just fund 1 through 2. So let's look at that. So you go to 1 through 2, say we just put enough money in here for 1 through 2. Now let's go to Hot Springs County. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 projects don't get funded in Hot Springs County because they don't meet the cutoff. So then you go down to Laramie County Conservation District. 1, 2, 3 out of their 6 don't get funded. So it's not about adding money for one conservation district. So if you flip that over to the next page and you look at those priorities, Niobrara, Lower North Platte, 3 doesn't get funded. Posya Conservation District doesn't get funded. Goose Creek, Sheridan Conservation District loses 2 projects. Lower Shoshone doesn't get funded. South Bighorn loses 2 projects, doesn't get funded. So the idea that this is adding money on to one conservation district based on the way the criteria works and the program works is it's based on those criteria. And if you want to cut it off at number 2, Mr. Vice Chairman, that's fine with me, but just be aware, you're eliminating all of those other people from participating in the program. You're not adding money for a conservation district. You're adding money for every single one of those that doesn't have a level 1 and a priority 1 and priority 2 project.
Madam Chairman, I didn't say I was going to cut anybody off. I just think that this needs to be addressed by this committee over time, maybe as an interim topic. Because I do not believe it is equitable for one district to get this large a share of the money over and over and over every year. So that's all I'm going to vote for water because I always vote for water. But I do believe this is, I don't care if it was Larry Hicks's or frankly if it was mine. Should one entity get all of this money? Half of the money? That's the question. So, Madam Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, Representative. And I think Senator Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just to add on to this kind of, I guess, this circumstance that I see in front of me. A lot of this bridge is in the Sweetwater. And I don't know what our conservation district is actually doing, but if anything that helps our area and develops a thing they need to have developed is a good thing. I can't help our conservation district. It doesn't even have a mill levy. So that's a whole nother question, but I'm not opposed to having a situation like this one where we have a district that's reaching out in other places, doing things for other areas. I think that's a good thing. I can't help what the local districts do or don't do, but I think these projects seem to be good projects. They're much broader than just, Bags, Wyoming, let's say. And that's why I'm supportive of it. Whether we have an interim topic that talks about the reasons why it looks like this, maybe that's appropriate. But I think in this situation, it seems like it's so broad, it isn't just specifically for one locality. It's a very, very wide because of the area we have in southwest Wyoming down there. So I'm supportive of the way it looks. I'm also supportive of having a conversation about why it looks like this.
Madam
Thank
Chair,
you,
if
Chair.
I could make
Go
a
ahead,
suggestion,
Director.
maybe potentially instead of an interim topic, that's kind of what we use our August meetings for, is to talk about criteria changes or, things like this. So it's a potential topic we could add to our August meeting to talk about that.
All right, let's do that. And is your microphone on? I'm having trouble hearing you. Could you
Yes,
get a
I'll
little
try to speak up.
closer?
Sorry.
All right, that would be good. And I think it would be beneficial for all of us to learn more about the small water project program, how it is administered, and how you do outreach to make sure that all conservation districts across the state know about it, so that, it's one of those programs, just like any other with irrigation districts. You may see more projects in some areas because of failing infrastructure, because of emergencies, because of whatever is going on. And so we know that those things ebb and flow across the state. We're seeing more projects in this area right now, but it may not be so in the future. So we know that some of those things ebb and flow, those of us who have been here on this committee for a while. With that, let's go on to the summary of
Madam Chair.
account. Oh, did we have another one? Representative Larson, sorry, I didn't see you.
That's right, thank you. So, Madam Chairman, just a question on this Little Snake River Conservation District. I mean, the claim has far-reaching impacts outside of just that specific conservation district. Which of these projects on this list, currently as it sits in front of us today, reach outside of that conservation district?
Senator Hicks, are you prepared to answer that? I wasn't quite prepared
No, I
to go
don't have
into
the
this
answer,
kind
which
of a-
ones are in Sweetwater County, so just.
Madam
keep-
Chair,
Yeah,
I'm sorry to interrupt,
Okay.
but if anybody has the actual e-notebook on their laptop, page 568 is a map of all the small water projects on your list today shown, and you can kind of see a bunch of red dots down there. If you want to get an idea of where those
Senator
projects are
Larson, are
located.
you able to access that with your laptop?
Madam Chairwoman, Representative Crago has it up here. And for the most part, I can't see any red dots in Sweetwater County, maybe right on the border there, but none of these projects, it looks like it's more in southern Carbon County from this map.
All right, well, thank you, Representative Larson. I would remind you that water doesn't really respect boundaries like that very well. So depending on how things flow, it may be, it may be closer than you think. So, all right, with that, are there any further questions? Further questions on the small water project program summary for account 1? We'll move on to account 2.
Madam Chair, I know you're getting close to your time. For brevity's sake, account 2, the available funding is $946,244. We are requesting $480,000 for the projects shown on there. If you want Jody to go through that list, we can, but or just start answering any specific questions you might have.
All right, are there any questions? Representative Summers.
Madam Chairman, thank you. So as I looked at this account 2 list, I saw a lot of 3s and 4s priorities. So the question is, why are we funding those?
All right, go ahead.
My general impression of the overall categories of 3 and 4 priorities, priority 3 is pipeline and conveyance, which gets all of the solar well conversions.
Okay.
So that is a pretty big category.
Just the type of.
Yes,
basically.
because there's, as we all see when we drive around the state, there's so many windmills out there and old wells that, a solar system would provide an immense benefit to. So I think that typically covers the rehabilitation side for priority 3. Priority 4 is sort of general irrigation. As we know, that's largely a rehab category.
And Madam Chairman, thank you. And
Go ahead.
Madam Chairman, thanks. One other question, I guess. Obviously, if we have this on the August meeting, then I'll get a better understanding of the priority. It doesn't make sense to me that a type is a priority. It should
Agree.
be number of cows served or number of whatever acres served or something. But a pipeline, it could be huge, right? It could be this entire area opens up to grazing or whatever that is. It just doesn't seem like that's a common sense way to prioritize.
I understand the confusion, and you're sure not the first person to ask that question. But when we put the priority system together, we were sort of looking at the agency mission. And historically, back from 1980, as we take a look at the agency mission, our, priority number one has been, let's put water to use where there hasn't been water to use before. And then before that, where can we store water in the desert for, so that got storage. And then three, well, if we have a well over here, we need to be able to move that water places. So that got your pipeline and conveyance and solar. So it was kind of a look at traditional program and overall agency mission when we're assigning those sort of groups for how they are numbered. Does that help?
And I would chime in on that just a little bit. Some of these are not identified in a watershed study, but I think when they do their watershed study and planning, they're planning an entire system. So they're looking at how these projects fit in the system as well as, the individual project. Does that make sense, Representative?
Madam Chairman, it does, but the vast majority of projects in both sides are not identified in a study. So we're not using that to qualify anybody.
That is true on this list. However, they still can look at the overall system, even if a watershed study, the office looks at that. All right. Okay, back into, did we cover the summary of account two? I'm a little confused where we're at now. Take us back to where we need to go.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I covered it very briefly, considering it's 8:51.
All right, yes, we are running out of time. So is there any further discussion? We will have more discussion on this topic in August. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion on the small water project program. Moved by Representative Nyman, seconded by Senator Larson. Any discussion? Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion passes.
Okay, Madam Chair, I would ask to flip over the summary sheet to the back side now, and these are all the projects out of the construction bill that we're going to ask for your recommendation on. Instead of going through them all, again, considering the time, I'm going to point out 4 of them because they're a little unique because of the House Appropriations Amendment. So the Bighorn Regional, the first one on the list there, this is one where we recommended we fund the pre-construction with existing water development, account $1. The Select Water Committee chose to then add funding from the general fund to fund the construction portion of that project. And again, because of that House Appropriations, being that amendment stripped out the general fund, the language now says it's contingent upon the transfer of funds to Water Development Account 1 from another funding source. So again, that's going to be dependent on what happens in the budget bill. If that one-time 16.9 were to come over, then that would satisfy that condition. So we would ask that, depending on, again, how that shakes out, that what we take to the Water Development Commission for their consideration on the 20th, that we have some flexibility. If the budget bill weren't to pass and we wouldn't be able to utilize that money, then we would suggest we take an agreement that just has the pre-construction dollars in it, so they can get started on design and we don't hold up the project. Then if there's a special session or something and that additional funding comes in for construction, then we would add that in through an amendment at a later date, say at the May meeting. Okay?
Well, let's back up for clarity. If in the Joint Conference Committee that wrinkle is worked out, then we're not dependent on the budget bill, is that correct?
Madam Chair, the way that it's worded right now is that really that additional funding for the construction piece is contingent upon a transfer of funds to Water Development Account 1. So if, for example, you worked out between the two sides that you were going to remove the Board of Control coming out of Account 1 through the State Engineer's Office budget, then there wouldn't be a transfer of funds to Account 1. If it was this one-time transfer, then there would be a transfer. So if it was taken out, that it comes from S1, from the State Engineer's Office, and put back on general fund, then we would not be able to satisfy that condition. And we'd have to come back next year to then ask for funding for the construction piece.
Go ahead, Representative Summers.
Madam Chairman, I mean, we put general fund dollars in the construction bill. If the budget doesn't pass, those dollars are not available.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Summers, if that money remains stripped out of the construction bill, then we are relying on that one-time biennium amount of $16.9 million to come from the general fund to account one from the budget bill to satisfy the language as it reads currently in the construction bill.
So let's just, Madam Chairman,
Wait just 1 minute. The way I understand it, the way the construction bill has always worked, it wasn't tied to the budget. We were just taking money in the construction bill out of the general fund and putting it in water development. The wrinkle has come in with the House Appropriations Committee tying the construction bill to the budget. And go ahead.
yeah, Madam Chairman, and I mean, I honestly don't know this because I've never seen it happen, right? But the bill, if the bill was just left as it was, comes out, it appropriates general fund dollars. But if there's no budget, there's no general funds. You understand? Your agency shuts down. There's no general funds for anything, for anybody. That's how it works.
Well, we may have to disagree on that, but we'll go ahead and go forward with our committee meeting.
So Madam Chair, then,
So,
Rand-
just 1 minute. The omnibus water bill is effective immediately, as soon as we walk out of this room. It's effective immediately. It's not contingent on the budget.
Madam Chairman, it is.
How?
Because we appropriate all the general fund dollars.
And we appropriate it through this bill effective immediately.
Madam Chair, if I could add.
Go ahead.
So we're funded through mineral severance taxes. So the majority of the construction bill is out of mineral severance taxes. It would not be affected by the budget bill. The only piece that's affected by the budget bill is where we were trying to bring in that general fund money to fund the construction portions of 4 projects and the $500,000 for the small water. So that's the only piece that really ties to the budget bill or a transfer of funds to account 1 or 2. Okay?
All right. So the rest of the construction bill would be effective immediate. Not the general fund. Okay. All right. We've got that figured out, I think. All right. Back to the level 3 projects in account 1. Are you wanting us to take all of the back page together, or will that be each level account 1, account 2, and account 1, 2, and 3 separately? Or do you want to go through all of this and have one motion?
Madam Chair, I could point out 3 more quick things and you can do it
Okay.
all in one motion.
All right, that sounds good.
Okay, so the second one would be Ranchester, which is in that second group of projects, second to the last one, Ranchester Transmission Line. Again, this is one where we recommended funding for the design out of account 1, existing mineral severance tax dollars. And then the construction piece would have come out of general funds. So again, asking for some flexibility, depending on how this all works out. That's got ARPA funds, we want to keep it moving. So if there was an issue with the budget, we didn't get that transfer of funds, we would take an agreement to the commission that was just for the pre-construction dollars. And it wasn't reliant on the construction piece. And then construction, we'd amend in later or next year, depending on how that all worked out, and they could keep the project moving with design,
All right.
okay?
Does everyone understand? Everyone understand how this is working? All right.
That's 2 of them. And then the last 2 would be the last 2 on the list, Happy Valley and Sheridan Northeast. And those are just projects where there's already pre-construction funding from last year, and we were amending in the construction dollars, but those dollars were going to be coming from general fund. So if the general fund money is not available, then we would just not take those amendments to the commission on March 20th. Or if there was a budget session in June or something, we would just wait. And if they ever came available, we'd move forward at that time and bring them to the commission.
All
We'd
right,
ask
so-
for your recommendations give us some flexibility.
All right, so does everyone understand that if the water development funds would move forward, and if there's funding for the other projects contemplated from the general fund, if there is funding for that, they would take both recommendations forward. If not, those would be discarded, basically. With that said, would you want two separate motions on that, or one motion containing both of those components?
Madam Chair, I think this is similar to how we handled small water with the availability of funding
All right.
and just a general
All right.
recommendation.
I would enter, any further discussion on this issue? Moved by Representative Summers, seconded by Senator Guru. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. That motion has passed.
Madam Chair, the only other thing I have is just mention that we will be talking to the commission at our March 20th meeting about our August tour. And right now, we are suggesting we potentially go to the Evanston area. So just courtesy heads up on that.
All right, it sounds like we'll be traveling to Evanston. Representative Yin?
Madam Chair,
Just a minute.
I just have one question for the director, if I may. On the construction bill, on second reading, we had an amendment that increased the wheatland appropriation by double. How would that affect the account, and are we draining the account by doing that?
Madam Chair, Representative Yin, I appreciate you bringing that up because that's one thing I forgot about and I wanted to talk about. So yes, it is not contingent upon any general funds. And by increasing that dollar amount, we are basically appropriating additional dollars out of account two. So that would be less money available for next year's account two rehab projects. So currently we have the agreement written up as the amendment shows with $4.5 million worth of grant in round numbers. If that amendment were to fail, then we would again want the flexibility to change that agreement back to the original 2.6 million, if I remember right, in that agreement.
All right.
So yes, it does take from next year's account two funds.
So do you need any action from us on that, or will the bill be the action that you comply with?
Madam Chair, I don't believe so. With the flexibility contingent upon the available funding, I think we're.
All right, okay, all right. Does that conclude our work with you today, Mr. Director? I see that it looks like Greg Kerr was online to talk about the planning bill, but that is not on our agenda, so I'm not exactly sure what he was wanting to visit about exactly, or if he wanted to talk during our University of Wyoming agreements. Does anyone know?
Madam Chair,
Yes,
he was
go
just
ahead.
here in case any questions came up
Okay,
about the water.
thank you
research
very
project.
much for that. I appreciate that. All right, thank you, Director. I'm sure you'll want to stick around and hear our interim topics. So with that, we will go on to our interim topics. We have had two submitted. One of them was Senate File 122, thank you. From this year, the bill did not make it through the Senate. It appears we're having some issues with when we abandon water rights or rearrange water rights due to subdivisions and some in-town parcels as well. Senator Kinski brought this out of his area to address that. That is one of the interim topics that has been put up for consideration. Is there anyone here who would like to speak further on that topic? Anyone on the committee? I think it's a fairly, it's something we need to review. A law we passed a couple of years ago is creating some problems, so I don't think that will take a lot of time. That's what that topic is about. The next one was submitted by Senator Dockstetter about water primacy in Wyoming. I'm wondering if maybe that's why our good director of DEQ might be here and our some of the crew there. So if you'd like to come down and visit with us about that priority, we'd sure love to hear about it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Todd Parfit, Director of the Department of Environmental Quality, and with me is Jennifer Zigmund, who is the Administrator of the Water Quality Division. We did see this come up as a potential interim topic. Happy to answer any questions. We've visited this topic several times in the past. We'd be happy to update our information for this committee and entertain whatever direction you'd like to go.
All right, thank you, Senator Hicks.
Mr. Chairman, I've sat through some of those in the past, and so just give us a little high-level overview of what it would take for staff and cost to assume primacy for clean water, for the Clean Water Act.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Senator Hicks. We've done an evaluation of the other states in the region and what EPA uses for staff and costs, et cetera. And our estimate is that it would take, give or take a few, but rough estimate, 25 full-time employees and roughly $6 million a year to implement the program.
Madam Chairman, and that's the reason that we've never been inclined to accept primacy for the program. So
Yep, that's the short
maybe help this
synopsis.
committee make a decision as to whether they want to move it forward as an interim topic.
Yeah, all right. Okay, any further questions for the director? Representative Nyman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I too evidently drank too much coffee this morning. I had a situation, and maybe you were the one I visited with this summer. What could we do? I mean, I've got folks up in my part of the country that are, they're having to deal directly with the EPA and going to boil orders on things as simple as a power quit and a loss of pressure, and they had to shut down. He said, all I literally had to do was go reset the switch and turn the pump on. Nothing was done. He said it shut me down for 3 days boiling water. I couldn't run my Pepsi machines or nothing. And his question to me was, what could the state possibly do to help mitigate some of those small deals like that? He said, is there something I could do rather than to try to work through the EPA? Is there any kind of a joint deal, or is it all or nothing? I mean, because nobody wants to hire an extra 25 people and $6 million and all that nonsense. And I think Wyoming is the only one that doesn't have primacy over their water, isn't it? That true? And so with that in mind, is there any halfway that could help some of our smaller businesses or anybody that's dealing with this, that they could work through in a situation like that, where you guys could work something with EPA to say, hey, could you send somebody out and make sure that's all it was? And then we don't have to shut people down and have them boiling water for something as simple as a power surge. And so just curious, and if it's not, I get it, but I'm just wondering, is there something we could do to help our folks not have to deal with the EPA and maybe do more of a local involvement to mitigate some of those situations?
All right, go ahead.
Madam Chair, Representative Nyman, there are different components of the Safe Drinking Water Act, and I think it might be helpful for the committee if Administrator Zigmund would walk through what we implement for the Safe Drinking Water Act, and then the parts that EPA implements that we're talking about, because we have had conversations with EPA about, can we parse out certain elements of the primacy package? Along those lines, so if you don't mind, I'll turn that over to Ms. Zigmund.
Thank you, Madam
Go
Chair. So we do implement programs to protect drinking water within Wyoming. Under the Environmental Quality Act, my staff do issue permits to construct drinking water systems and to operate those systems. Under the Safe Drinking Water Act, we do implement the operator certification program. We do capacity development, and then we work with partner agencies on the drinking water SRF. So we do work extensively with EPA Region 8. They implement the Public Water System Supervision Program. That's the program that we don't have primacy for. So it does require a lot of coordination with Region 8. I think we have been building better relationships and partnerships with Region 8 to advocate for the interests of our communities. There are situations where we have not agreed with EPA's regulation of public water systems in Wyoming, and we have assisted our communities with technical assistance to
push back on some EPA decisions and see if we can't come to some better conclusions, more defensible decisions. So we remain committed to doing that. We, again, will be working through our programs, which dovetail with EPA's regulation of the PWSS program. So I'd be happy to provide more information, but that's a delineation of the duties and how we do work together. But we are here to help our communities with regulations, whether that's through us or EPA as needed.
Do you have a follow-up?
Well, not much, just, my guy just said it would have been really neat to have somebody from the state come up and say, sure enough, his power tripped off. Let him be turned back on instead of 3 days later, still boiling water until they finally come to that determination. So I get it. I mean, touching the EPA and taking on that responsibility is daunting at best. But if we could continue to look into what we can do to maybe mitigate some of those smaller issues and stuff that would help our operators not to have to deal with what he called egregious oversight or something like that. He said all they did was flip a switch, and he said everything was back and good, never opened or compromised the system. And he said, but I'm boiling water. Just because that's 4 guys in a vehicle, he told me, were saying, nope, you're gonna have to boil water. Sorry, click. And so pretty tough to deal with when you're trying to stay in business. But thank you, I appreciate your efforts.
And
Go ahead, Director.
Madam Chair, and I would just say that we have had instances where communities have had some challenges with EPA and their implementation of the program. And we're always happy to assist those communities in the conversation and the technical analysis and to push back on EPA where it's appropriate.
All right, go ahead. Representative Summers.
Madam Chairman, thank you. I just think this is I think it would be a great topic. I mean, I really think Wyoming, where we can take over primacy, we need to look at the cost, obviously, but we're the only state not doing it. That's mind-boggling. So.
Thank you, Representative, and I think you might have been out of the room when we said we're talking about 25 FTE and $6 million per year. So we have looked into this in the past, but it's up to the committee if we'd like to do it again. I'm sure you would stand at the ready to help us. All right, any further questions? Senator Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just a broad question dealing with the Regulatory Reduction Task Force and some of the things that have come across. Is there anything that you're doing that exceeds the EPA minimums? That's a broad question that could then help with changing some of the, your policies. And I do like your tie. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Kolb, I don't know if we have the time to get into all of that, but
Well, just as
go ahead.
this is a broad statement, are you exceeding the EPA minimums? Yes, no?
So Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
Senator, if we're talking just globally as an agency, yeah, there are instances, and then there was I think it was House Bill 35 passed, that came out of the efforts with the Regulatory Reduction Task Force to take a look at that after working with the regulated community to see where we need to make changes. Specific to the drinking water program, the programs that we do have, I don't believe any of that is more stringent than the federal government requirements. And certainly on the drinking water, we don't have primacy for that. Representative Summers is correct. We are the only state that does not have primacy for that component, but we may start seeing some states reconsider their involvement with the drinking water program because of the cost, because of the new requirements, and the funding from the federal government has remained flat for the last 15 years. So kind of drifted a little bit on your question there.
All right, thank you for that. Any further questions? Seeing none, I think we have reviewed that topic. Is there any public comments on the topic of water primacy? Any public comments? Seeing none, that concludes our last submitted comment. However, there is one that was in the Ag Committee that I would like us to consider. Here, I think it's a better fit, and that was Representative Schlegel was wanting to look at tighter controls on allocation of groundwater permits and the concept of senior water rights injury. That was something he had brought to the Ag Committee and I think would fit much better here. He wants to look at current statute and proposed statute changes to allow the state engineer to not appropriate water if it can be shown the aquifer is not maintaining current water levels. So that would be something I would just throw out there for consideration. Are there any comments on that topic? Senator Hicks?
I believe it was, I can't remember, it's either 2 or 3 years ago, we did a pretty deep dive into that subject. We went all the way to the bottom of the well and came back out, found out that it's a complicated situation and it doesn't necessarily follow prior appropriation doctrine for the reason how you complete wells and the depth of the formation and the geology. And so we can certainly go there again, but I don't think that this committee, after you go through the explanation and have a better understanding, may or may not be inclined to change that. But it's the will of the committee. But this committee has taken a pretty extensive look at that 3 years ago. It's whatever the committee wants.
Yes, and that's why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah, and maybe it's just a review topic to come in and get the committee up to speed on that. I think that would be appropriate.
Well, and that might be the thing for both the topic we just talked about with water primacy and this one. Take a look and see if, if there is any inclination that after review, if we had any inclination to move forward on anything. So on those two topics. All right, go ahead.
Madam Chairman, on the water primacy thing, I think the other reason is the example Representative Nyman gave is, are there areas where we can coordinate better with private industry or local government and DEQ? Are there ways we can help DEQ out to help facilitate more things? So I think there's possibility there, some topics.
There is, yep, I would agree. All right, so with that, that takes us through what has been submitted. I would entertain if
Chairman,
any of
no,
the
it does
committee.
not.
Oh, it does not. What's the,
Madam Chairman, just a reminder, is you brought that one, and then I also wanted to suggest another topic.
yes, I was coming back to the committee
Okay.
for other topics
All right.
now that were not submitted through the online portal. So I'll come back to the committee. Senator Hicks, did you have something?
Yeah, Madam Chairman, in 2022, there was a bill, it was called Clarification of Existing State Ownership of Groundwater. Not necessarily the dealing with the priority and the appropriation. I think numerous members sponsored that legislation, including myself, you, Madam Chairman, Representative Nyman, Grew, and Summers on that. There was some confusion when it got to the House side about whether we operate under riparian doctrine or prior appropriation doctrine. I don't think this would take a lot of time, but I would like to bring it back as just an interim topic, that we look at that bill and take a look at it again as just a clarification of existing ownership, primarily state ownership of groundwater. I think it may take an hour and a half, 2 hours max to go over that. I think some of us are familiar, but didn't bring it this year because it was a budget session.
All right.
And I, quite frankly, by the time I submitted it was after the deadline. So that was my fault, but I would ask the committee for consideration to take a look at that.
All right. Okay, are there any other discussion on this topic? Is there any public comment on this topic? All right, seeing none. Is there anyone else from the committee that would like to present an interim topic that didn't
Madam
get
Chair.
in? Go ahead, Senator Larson, or Representative Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. One of the big priorities for my area and really the whole state is Colorado River issues, and I'd just like to see an update from maybe the state engineer on current issues regarding Colorado River, what we're looking at there. I just think maybe an hour or two, just long discussion from him, but could just give us an update, see if there's anything the committee can do to support their efforts.
Thank you, Representative Larson. I think that's always on our list. I thank you for bringing it up. All right, anyone else?
Yes, Madam Chairman.
Go ahead, Representative.
So, Madam Chairman, are we gonna prioritize these now? You gonna prioritize them? How does that happen? 'Cause I
So,
forgot, actually.
okay, Representative Summers, what I've been doing in my committees is I was going to have David make us a list of criteria, everyone having looked at these and had the time to think about them. Then we'll send that out and let everybody rank them, and then we'll bring that back to the committee and look at the rankings, evaluate our committee time, and then we'll go from there. Is that acceptable to everyone to do it that way without objection? That is what we will do unless someone has an objection. Seeing no objections, is there any further discussion or business to come before the committee? Representative Summers?
So, Madam Chairman, the issue I brought up with on the small water projects, I know the Water Development was gonna bring it at their August meeting, so I assume that that's gonna, at least require some time.
Yes,
Understand
we will have that on the agenda. Director Mead will get that pulled together for us, and we'll make sure that we have adequate time to discuss that topic. All right? Okay, any further business? Thank you so much to our staff who has worked so hard during the legislative session and the interim for us. We look forward to working with you again. And with that, we are adjourned.